Welcome back. Now for the news in detail. We'll start from Afghanistan, where 17 pro-government fighters have been killed in a Taliban attack in the northern Takhar province. The provincial officials said 4 others were wounded in the attack on the forces base in Khwaja Bahauddin district. The officials said the additional forces were dispatched after the attack and the Taliban were driven back. They said the forces were led by Malik Ahmed Tatar, a feared commander locally known as a ruthless enemy of the Taliban. Claiming responsibility, the Taliban said 21 soldiers, including a commander, were killed in the attack. Meanwhile, Kabul says it will disclose a list of negotiators for intra-Afghan talks after the US and Taliban sign a peace deal. The talks between Taliban and Washington are on hold since December 11th attack on Bagram Air Base. In a statement, Afghan Presidential Palace said the delegation will represent the government of Afghanistan. Deputy spokesperson Durrani Javed Waziri said Kabul will only hold dialogues with the Taliban if the Taliban show readiness to talk with the Afghan people. Moving on to Iran, which has accused France of interference in the case of an Iranian-French academic detained in the Islamic Republic. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said Fariba Adilkar is an Iranian national and faces security charges. Spokesperson Abbas Mousavi said French Foreign Ministry's request has no legal basis. Earlier, Paris summoned the Iranian envoy over the detention of Adilkar and another academic, Roland Marchal. Paris demanded their immediate release. Meanwhile, Tehran said an Australian academic, Kylie Moore Gilbert, jailed for espionage, must serve her sentence. Moreover, Iran has summoned Kuwait's envoy in Tehran to protest about officials hosting an anti-Iranian meeting. In a statement, Iran's foreign ministry accused Kuwaiti officials of meeting a representative of a terrorist group. The statement did not name the alleged group. It said these kinds of actions are a clear interference in the internal affairs of Tehran. Iran and Kuwait have had relatively good relations in recent years, despite tensions between Tehran and other Gulf Arab states. In Iraq, protesters have broken into the Nasiriyah oil field and forced employees in the control room to cut off the field's power supply. Security officials said the oil field is offline until further notice. The protesters hailed President Barham Saleh's rejection of Asad al-Idani's nomination for Prime Minister. The Nasiriyah oil field produces 90,000 barrels of oil per day. This is the first time the protesters have shut down an entire oil field since demonstrations began on 1st October. Iraq's economy depends on oil exports, which make up over 90% of its revenues. Turkey says it will not vacate its 12 observation posts in Syria's rebel-held province of Idlib. Defense Minister Hulusi Akar said Turkey respects the Sochi agreement reached with Russia and expects Moscow to abide by it. He said Ankara will carry out its mission of ensuring the ceasefire stays in place. Akar said Turkish troops at these points have been ordered to respond without hesitation if attacked. He said innocent Syrians have suffered a lot already, and the regime shouldn't be allowed to make them suffer anymore. Regarding the deployment in Libya, he said the army is ready to protect Turkish interests, whether at home or abroad. In Istanbul, hundreds of demonstrators have gathered near the Russian consulate to protest against the ongoing attacks on Idlib. The demonstrators, mostly Syrians living in Turkey, chanted slogans against Russia for attacks on civilian targets in rebel-held Idlib. Demonstrators said they wanted to highlight the Syrian government's violence against civilians and the humanitarian situation unfolding in the province. Protesters, including women with their children, held pictures of victims and banners lamenting the world's silence on the issue. Meanwhile, the UN says over 230,000 people have been displaced in Syria amid intensified attacks. Meanwhile, Turkey has warned against attempts to create a Syria-like crisis in Libya. Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said if Libya becomes like Syria, regional countries will also suffer. He said every effort should be made to prevent Libya from being divided and sliding into chaos. Cavusoglu said Ankara only deals with a legitimate government. He stressed that the military and security deal signed with Tripoli is important. Meanwhile, Libya's national oil company faced closure amid clashes close to country's largest refinery in the western Zawiya port. In another development, the Speaker of Libya's eastern-based parliament says Turkey's offer to deploy troops in the country is unacceptable. Aguela Saleh said such a move will amount to unwanted meddling in the internal affairs of a sovereign state. Saleh said Turkey's actions are ratcheting up tensions and destabilizing the region. Saleh condemned the maritime border agreement that Turkey signed with the Tripoli-based government of national accord. Meanwhile, Italy's Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has warned that Russia and Turkey are setting the agenda in their involvement in Libya's conflict. Conte said Moscow and Ankara were only pursuing a military and not a political solution to the North African state. In Egypt, 28 people have been killed in two separate road crashes, one in Port Said city and the other east of Cairo. Security officials say 24 others were injured, several of them tourists, and some are in critical condition. In Port Said, the minibus carrying garment factory workers collided with a truck, killing 22 people. The accident came only hours after two buses carrying tourists collided with a truck near Cairo. Health officials said two Malaysian women and an Indian man were killed, along with 3 Egyptians. In central Mexico, 6 people have been killed and 5 others wounded in a shootout. Authorities said the attack took place in Uriangato, a city in the state of Guanajuato. In a statement, the mayor's office said police initially found 5 dead bodies. One of those wounded died after being brought to a nearby clinic. The office said it asked state authorities to ramp up security with 60 members of the public security forces. Police also recovered a discarded firearm and several bullet casings from the crime scene. Mexico's government says Guanajuato has recorded over 3,000 deaths between November and January. Moving on to the U.S., where 2 people have been killed and 7 others injured during a drive-by shooting at a music video set in Houston. Police said people were in the parking lot of an office complex filming a rap video when they were ambushed by shooters. It said 2 people were pronounced dead at the scene and the injured were sent to hospital. An investigation is underway into the incident. Meanwhile, an attacker stabbed 5 people at a rabbi's home in the New York State. A Jewish council said 2 of the victims are critical, with one of them stabbed at least 6 times. Authorities say people were stabbed during a Hanukkah celebration late Saturday night. Police said the suspect is in custody and an investigation is underway. The rampage follows days of increased tensions over anti-Semitic assaults. Moreover, the U.S. suffered more mass killings in 2019 than any other year on record. A database compiled by the Associated Press, USA Today, and Northeastern University recorded 41 incidents and 211 deaths. The findings revealed that there were more mass killings in the current year than any year going back to at least the 70s. Researchers said of all the cases this year, 33 involved firearms. The deadliest in 2019 were the killings of 12 people on Virginia Beach in May and 22nd in El Paso in August. And welcome back. We'll be looking at more news in detail. In Japan, police have found the remains of at least 5 people in a wooden boat that washed up on the coast of country's Sado Islands. Coast Guard officials said police have found 2 human heads. Chinen said the remains of bodies are partially skeletonized. Chinen said the boat is suspected to be from North Korea as the sides are painted with red Korean numbers and letters. The Australian government says it will compensate volunteer firefighters in New South Wales amid increasing political pressure. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said payments of up to 6,000 Australian dollars would be available for eligible firefighters. Now, he's also said that volunteers who spent over 10 days in the field this fire season will be eligible for compensation. Bushfires have razed over 1 million hectares in 5 states since September and left 8 people dead.
What the Commonwealth will be doing, together with the states who will administer the payments, is to be providing payments for income lost by firefighters, Rural Fire Service volunteers here in New South Wales. That will be paid with a maximum of up to $6,000 per individual.
NASA has revealed its latest Mars rover designed to seek out signs of life on the red planet. It will be used in part one of a 2-part mission in July 2020, collecting samples to analyze them back on Earth. More in this report.
The rover, which remains unnamed for now, was shown to the media under strict guidelines. Members of the press weren't allowed to wear makeup or perfume and had to wear the same white suits worn by NASA engineers.
So what we do in this room is we make sure we have a strict clean room protocol so that we are not contaminating our vehicles, so that we can preserve the science that we are interested in learning about.
The rover will be sent to Mars Jezero crater, which scientists believe was once a great lake. Here, the rover will pull samples from the ground, which will eventually be brought back to Earth in the mission's second phase.
We're carrying about 40 tubes on the vehicle. We're going to collect 20 to 30 probably for return. Once we have a sufficient set, we'll put them down on the ground. And another mission, which we hope to launch in 2026, will come, land on the surface, collect those samples, and put them into a rocket, basically.
The rover will eventually be named in early 2020. NASA's previous 4 Mars rovers were named Sojourner, Spirit, Opportunity, and Curiosity.
India's tourism industry has been hit by a wave of countrywide violent anti-government protests against a new citizenship law. Officials said about 200,000 tourists cancelled or postponed their trip to the Taj Mahal in the past 2 weeks. The officials at Taj Mahal said there has been a 60% decline in visitor footfalls in December this year. They said despite the assurance of security, most local and international tourists have decided to stay away. Meanwhile, managers in luxury hotels around the Taj Mahal said last-minute cancellations have further dampened business. Agra Tourism Development Foundation said internet suspension by the government has affected tourism by about 50 to 60%. On the other hand, across the border in Pakistan, a British Backpackers Society has declared Pakistan as the world's 3rd highest potential adventure destination for 2020. The society made the announcement after counting votes from adventure travel experts from around the world. In a post, the society called Pakistan a travel gem with otherworldly beauty, unforgettable road trips and hospitality at its core. It said besides offering stunning landscape in the north, the country offers rich culture, tradition and history in bulk. The society said with a new e-visa system and reforms, Pakistani government has put tourism at the front and center of its policy. Let's take a look at what the weather is doing around the world. In Fiji, 2 people were killed as Cyclone Sarai battered the South Pacific nation with strong wind and heavy rain. Authorities said over 2,500 people have been moved to 70 evacuation centers. Category 2 tropical cyclone is not expected to make landfall in Fiji, but the Weather Service has issued storm and flood warnings for parts of the country. The Meteorological Service said the cyclone is expected to have average winds of up to 110 kilometers an hour with momentary gusts to 150 kilometers an hour. Elsewhere, thousands of families have been affected by flooding from heavy rains in western Kenya. Government officials said the town of Kisumu was flooded by torrents that began on Christmas Eve. Authorities said over 6,000 families face displacement. They have lost most of their belongings. Locals said they have no dry place to sleep and fear the flooding could worsen. Government agencies have urged residents to move as soon as possible to a rescue center set up at a local secondary school. In the Philippines, the death toll from Typhoon Phanphone has risen to 41, while 12 people remain missing. The storm left the Philippines on Saturday after ransacking central Visayas, as officials continue to assess the damage. Rescue officials said the typhoon has affected over 1.5 million people, as tens of thousands are still in temporary shelters. Officials said over 260,000 homes were damaged by 200 km/h winds. The government estimates the damage to agriculture and infrastructure to be worth $21 million. It is the year's 7th typhoon to hit the Southeast Asian country. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.